opportunity to the automotive ecosystem. And third, I'll show you a little bit about how Intel thinks about this from a complete systems approach, with an end-to-end solution from not only the car, but through the data center and through the end user's devices. So as a technologist, to me, one of the most disruptive trends in our whole society, actually, but certainly within our industry, is the flood of data that's coming. And we think that the amount of data that we have to deal with today is a lot, but it's really going to be driven to much, much different levels in the future. And it's going to be driven to that by the number of connected things or devices that are going to become connected to the internet and sending data. As all these things become smart and connected, the amount of data they're going to generate is massive. So rather than just talk about this, I thought we would actually share some numbers. So today, if you take the average person of today, you generate about 650 megabytes of data if you're an average internet user. Now, many of you in the press, you probably generate a little bit more. But if you take the average person, their Facebook posts, their tweets, the pictures they send to friends, the emails, they generate about 650 megabits a day. The estimate is by 2020 that will grow to 1.5 gigabytes. So that's more than a doubling of the amount of volume the average person will put out. But take a look at some of these other environments, I'll call them, that are going to be generating data. The average smart hospital will put out 3,000 gigabytes a day. The average autonomous car will drive 4,000 gigabytes a day of data. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. If you take an airplane flying through the sky, probably someplace close to 40,000 gigabytes a day. And then if you take a factory and you connect all the pumps, the people, it's generating over 1 million gigabytes a day. So that's a lot. And I thought we would try and turn this into kind of more humanistic and understandable terms. So where does the data come from on the car? So if you take a look at the cameras that are on the car, they're going to be generating somewhere around 20 to 40 megabits a second of data. The radar, that'll be sensing how far away everything is around it, between 10 and 100 kilobytes a second. And you can go on down these, but when you take a look at that, and you add those all up, and you take a look at the average person who drives about an hour every day. Now that's an average. I realize in LA it could be a little bit more. We heard earlier from Mark that the average person spends an hour each way in traffic, so I'm not going to count LA as the average, but if you take a look at the average, it's an hour. You add all those up, those sensors, all having to communicate back up, it's 4,000 gigabytes a day. So now let's turn that into some more humanistic numbers. We said that the average person by 2020 will generate about 1.5 gigabytes. So each car driving on the road will generate as much data as about 3,000 people, right? Okay. If we extrapolate that just a little bit further, and I have this discussion with people all the time, let's assume that by 2025 or something like that, you can pick the date, you can pick the number, there's 1 million autonomous cars out there driving on the roads. Remember, there's many times that number of cars sold each year, so I'm talking about a small percentage of the cars. That's going to be equivalent to 3 billion people's worth of data generated on the internet every day by just 1 million autonomous cars. That's increasing the population of the world in data speak from a people perspective by almost 50%. So when I talk about the flood of data that's going to be generated by these machines, I think when we put it into real life terms, like converting it to the number of people generating the equivalent amount of data, and multiplying that times the number of sites, like the number of cars, it really gets to tell you just how immense this amount of data is. There we go. So that's why we labeled today's talk, Data is the New Oil. Because if you take a look at the future, this data that's going to be generated, and you think about the internet and how it's grown up around people and people's data, and you think about really the immensity of the data going to be generated by cars, it's an opportunity. And so I always use the example, let's say we had a car driving between here and San Diego. Well, if you want to do that in an autonomous world, a car that's a driverless car, without data, that car will not move. Not unless you want to go back to the old style in that mode of driving. You're going to have data as much as you're going to have any other kind of propulsion. Because without the precision maps being downloaded on a regular basis, because they're too detailed to carry from here to San Diego in one data set, you're going to have to get downloads of that as you drive along. You're going to have to get uploads on any kinds of road hazards that are new since that data was created. So that has to get downloaded to you. All of those things have to be sent to you. And without those, your car will have to try and deal with the world in a very manual way. So data becomes the new oil. It's also the new oil in that it's going to create whole new industries, whole new ecosystems, and whole new opportunities around it. And so it's when we act on that data, it's when we put it to use, that opportunity comes. So let's take a look at really 3 types of data that the car will generate in the future. The first is what we call the technical data. And so this is the data that's coming off the car that starts to, remember, the car has to look at the world and understand it. It has to see stoplights. It has to see stop signs. It has to see children running in the street. It has to be able to discern between a child and a dog, right? And it has to see all that data. It has to understand how things have changed since its last update. It has to look at the map constantly and look back and forth. And that we call the technical data. Now, whoever has the most of that technical data will, as a result, have the best algorithms that are used for machine learning and deep learning. And those algorithms are what give you the ability to drive autonomously. If you have very limited data, the car is going to constantly be stopping and trying to understand what it sees. If you have a rich set of data that encompasses many situations, then your car, your algorithms will be smart enough to adapt, to move around objects, to deal with cones in the road. All of those kinds of situations are going to have to be learned by the machine, and they're learned through that technical data. So technical data is the first kind of data that's out there. The next type of data that's valuable is what we'll call societal or crowdsourced data. Now we start to kind of use this today. You see it on your phone, you see it on your tablet, your PC. It starts to know where you are, and it starts to send you updates or give you details. And your car will have that same capability. You'll crowdsource data. You see this in apps like Waze today. But in an autonomous world, that has to all happen below, let's call, the hood. It has to occur by the car itself. There's a lot more opportunity, things like parking spaces and parking congestion, and even data about the passengers inside the car, because we'll want to watch that, because if you're asleep and we know we need to wake you up, because the precision maps start to fall without the right precision in a while, knowing what's going on with the passengers in the car is critical as well. Again, whoever has the best and most of this type of data will be able to have the best applications, will be the best resourced to provide that type of user interface and user convenience. And the last type of data is your personal data. And this can be a variety of data. It's tracking your location, where you stopped, how many miles you went, how long do you stop at locations, what's in there. And this data will come from sensors inside the car and outside the car. This data can be used to really provide you a rich user experience. It can watch and listen to what kind of music you like to listen to. What do you like to do? How do you entertain yourself? It can craft the entertainment that's provided through the 5G connection. So instead, if it sees you like to watch movies while you drive and they like to be adventure movies, it starts to craft those kind to come through the car as well. That's an opportunity as well. And so each one of these data sets provides different opportunities and different unique assets that as the automotive industry moves into this world, it needs to think deeply about. So now the question is, what do we do with all this data? So it's not enough to simply capture this data. What we've talked about as we've gone through here, that you have to turn this data into an actionable set of insights. And each one of those, I tried to walk you through what those insights could typically be, from simply being able to drive the car in autonomous mode and have maps that are accurate. Remember, we're talking about maps that are accurate within inches. Because if you're on a snow-filled road, those maps are going to be what keep you inside your lanes. Okay? 2, your personal data, which again, may be something you want to protect or understand. And so understanding all of this data and having a model and a method and a set of technologies that allows you to manage that from end to end, from the car through the data center to the end user, is critical. And it's how we've been taking a look at our strategy as a corporation. So now let's take a look at how do we think about this. And we talk about this as a virtuous circle. And cars are just one example of this virtuous circle. And you could go back to that early example of all the data sources I told you about, planes and trains and factories and hospitals. And each one of these have this virtuous cycle. And what's critical about this virtual cycle is you have the thing that's down at the bottom. And that thing could be a car, it could be you and your cell phone in today's world, it could be a hospital, it could be an airplane, it could be all kinds of devices. Those devices, unconnected, are old school, are the way the world works today and in the past. Those things, as they get sensified, as they get to be connected, become now rich data sources that can be mined and managed and create whole new experiences. The next thing that's critical is what's up on top, the cloud. Without the cloud collecting this data and providing a platform in which to do algorithms and analytics against, that data would sit out at those end devices and not be highly useful. It couldn't be shared. It couldn't be utilized in mass quantities. Together, though, they build a world that's smart and connected and can provide whole new experiences. Now, we put 2 things in the center as accelerants. And you can see in our strategy, we've done things recently to really drive this. The first is memory. Remember, we're talking about high precision maps as an example, with data accuracy down to a few inches. That's a massive amount of data. We showed you the amount of data that car is throwing off, the algorithms that are going to be needed to manage those. All of those are high users of memory. So high density, low cost, non-volatile memory is going to be critical inside the car. The next thing is FPGAs. FPGAs are used to bring software down into silicon in a dynamic way. You can change the software, you can update the software, and have it be accelerated. You're not going off the silicon to a hard drive or other memory sources and back on. You're driving the software right on silicon. And we've been making investments across all of these areas to really drive this strategy from end to end. We believe we have a leadership position in the data center. We have a leadership position in these connected things and devices, and if you look at our booth, you'll see many of those out there. We provide the connectivity as we're leading the way to 5G, and we've been investing in memory and FPGA by both driving raw technology in the case of memory and doing acquisitions like a $17 billion acquisition of Altera to provide access to the FPGA solutions. So let's talk about the thing that glues all these together, and that's 5G. We all hear about it. I really kind of want to spend just a minute on what is it. And 5G is very different than 4G. In 4G, we all saw one thing. The data rate on our phones sped up. But 5G is really about connecting everything. And it's a broad band of connectivities across the full spectrum, from gigahertz down to megahertz. And what it's designed to do is provide both short distance and long distance, high speed, high bandwidth capacity. And so you see that what we're talking about is 1,000x capacity, so we can provide large amounts of those connected cars. We talked about 3 billion people equivalent. 10x latency reduction, so it has to be high speed in these large data quantities, right? So think about being able to download your pictures or movies almost instantly. And providing about a 50x peak data capability. So these are networks that are transformable. We can manage them. We can adjust the bandwidths and the capabilities on these networks. And so as we know people are driving home, we're broadening the bandwidth capabilities in the spectrums that drive autonomous driving, drive the mapping hardware. And as we know people are then getting off the roads at night, we start to drive bandwidth towards people's homes so that they can now watch movies, do all their entertainment at home. And they'll be in what we call vehicle-to-vehicle communication as well, so that you can see what other cars are doing and understand that. And the algorithms inside your car will be able to talk to the data from the cars around you and help in that decision making. So we're committed to helping this ecosystem deliver on autonomous driving and the driving future. But I'm going to be honest, this industry still has challenges. This isn't a done deal. There's a lot of technology that has to get developed still. There are 4 areas we see as challenges to tackle the autonomous driving. First is the size of the data sets. A single Tesla fleet cars we talked about could create just 40 terabytes of data in just 8 hours of driving. So that's a huge data set for within a data center. Second is the time to train. So as all this data comes in and you want to change the algorithm, how does a car react to construction that's occurring on your street, in your neighborhood? How does it navigate around that? How is it learning from the last car and the car before that? So it navigates more smartly. We need to be able to turn software that today takes weeks to generate in hours. And basically what we want to do is be able to do algorithms for all types of situations your car could see overnight. And those today, in today's world, can take weeks. Third is security. And I think we all have read about this. We've heard about it in our homes, in our workplaces. The car is especially a place we want to make sure is secure. And we believe that to do this, it's going to take really the industry coming together and collaborating. That no one company will be able to provide all the security solutions and provide all the computing capabilities to connect that security to. And lastly is accessibility and scalability. Really increasing requirements, and really this is about machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we all hear about that. But you have to do this through bigger and bigger data sets. That really is the only way to do this. And in some cases, we're going to want to share this data set across the industry. When it comes to safety, when it comes to how a car reacts in an unsafe situation, I think the industry itself will want to share best known methods and really make sure that as much as possible, every car is using the best data and the best decision matrix so that people are safe. Now, companies will differentiate above this with additional redundancy, additional user interface. But the fundamental safety of the driver and the occupants, the industry will want to get behind. So we really want to work collaboratively in this space. An example of this is Intel's been working with the Open Connectivity Foundation to align on industry standards on defining open and scalable IoT. And we've been working on this for a while. What this is really trying to do is ensure interoperability, so that car-to-car communication. We don't want you to just be able to talk to cars from your manufacturer. We really want to have an open platform that lets cars talk to each other about fundamental technology. Are you applying the brakes? Are you speeding up? Right? Do you see a hazard? That basic data we want to make sure is shared. It's non-proprietary. It's about making all of the roads safer. Standardizing how we collect that data and how we report it is critical. This open platform will really allow us to maximize innovation, I believe, across the industry. The only way we'll realize that automated driving vision and lead real change in this case is if we all work together in this space. To do this, to really exemplify this, I'm really excited to announce today that Intel will be targeting more than $250 million from our Intel Capital Foundation to investments over the next few years towards this collaborative workplace, towards this place where we're able to share this data, it's shared securely, and it's open and allowing the whole industry to rise up. The idea is to help fund issues like the open IoT innovation platforms, to fund startups that are trying to build security for this space, and to drive innovation and collaboration across the industry. I invite you to visit the Intel booth in the exhibit hall to learn more about how we can partner together. I truly believe that this great innovation can only be done if this industry pulls together. As a technologist, I know that over the 34 years I've worked in this industry, innovation and great change has only come when great companies work together. When they work together with a common vision to drive change and to drive innovation. At Intel, we're excited to be a partner with the automotive industry. We want to help scale this great technology and bring a much safer and more inclusive environment to the automotive world, and to allow automotive companies to differentiate using this technology and succeed through the power of data. We truly believe that data is the next oil. And with that, thank you. I appreciate your time and listening to our talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the view from Intel's point of view, and it's always